how do we inspire the families to pick the right things and to do the right things, to make the right choices, to get their kids in programs that are really going to change them. Co-curricular activities are critical for these kids. As you well know, the schools are great at teaching hard skills, but when it comes to leadership, responsibility, reliability, teamwork, self-confidence, those are things that are sometimes really hard to deliver in the classroom, and yet we can do them really well in a non-classroom setting. And all of the co-curricular programs we work with and see are really good at those things. Some of them are also great at the hard skills, but it's really the soft skills that we see as important. Our thesis is that there are not enough low-income kids that have access to these programs. That the top kids in every school can do it, they can get into programs, but you get below the top 5 or 10 or 15% at any school, they're not getting into things. Their parents don't know they're available, the kids don't have an understanding of what they are, how to get into them, and if we can help those kids and the parents understand that there's stuff out there and they can get into it and they can be successful, it's a plus for all of us. So there's some trends we see that are disturbing us. First of all, the students aren't aware of what's available. Second thing, they're completely flummoxed by the application process. They have no clue how to do an application. And second of all, they're even more flummoxed by the financial side of it. And as Steve Amstutz will talk a little bit later, the cost benefit of programs is really hard for even professionals to understand, much less a family who's looking at the potential for a program. And another trend I see that's negative is some of the schools have really focused on getting their kids into extracurricular programming, but how are they evaluating the person that's doing that, assigning of kids to program? Is that staff member being evaluated on how many kids they get into programs? Probably. Are they being evaluated on the quality and the quantity? The quality, I should say, not the quantity. The quality of the program and the correctness of that program for that kid? Probably not, and that's a weakness. It's just how many kids can we get into a program? And I see that in a lot of schools because that's the principal has the time to focus on that metric, not did you get the kids in the right program that really had a chance of changing their lives. And that disturbs us. And the last thing that disturbs us is we see kids picking programs on the basis of cost, not benefit. And how does a kid make a cost-benefit decision? He has no basis. His family has no basis to do it. We're the people that have to help them make that decision right. And I'll give you an example of that. This happened at one of our schools, happened to be KIPP Sunnyside, which is a wonderful partner of ours, where a student got a letter in September, congratulations, you have been accepted, or you have been accepted into the following program, come to our meeting and we can tell you this great opportunity you have. Well, this was a program that cost $7,000 for 2 weeks in Australia, and I don't know about you guys, but to me, I can go to Australia for 2 weeks for $3,000. This was a $7,000 program. And the program convinced this family that this was a great program for this kid. And it's a good program. For $7,000, you're not going to get a bad program, but this is a program that should have cost $3,000. Well, this was a low-income family that scrimped and saved and went to every family member, God knows what they did to get $7,000 for this kid to go to this program. That's a crime. This kid spent on this one program probably triple what should have been spent, and I'm not sure it's the best program for that kid, but this program was able to convince the parents that this was critical for that kid's success. We don't want to see that happen again. That was not the right place for this kid to be. So what we want to do is avoid those kind of mistakes going forward. We want our kids to get in the right programs, that have the right outcomes for them, and that's hopefully what you'll come away today is with a good sense of how to pick those programs, how to encourage, and more importantly, how to encourage families to understand what's out there and grab that chance and take that chance and make a phenomenal change in a kid's life. Our next speaker was Steve Amstutz, who for 10 years was principal at Lee High School, so he's been there on the principal side. He now runs Lee Next Step Fund, which works with schools to develop summer opportunities, and he can talk from his perspective I've asked him to talk from his perspective on how to make this really effective and how to make schools successful in getting this happening. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Amstutz.
It's not Mr. Amstutz.
Excuse me, Steve.
It's just Steve, right? So thank you, Steve. And thanks for being here. It's kind of funny to be here because this is one of those where Monica and I talked earlier today about an opportunity to preach to the choir, right? Because everybody's here because we already share this vision that our students can and will and should do more than what they're doing. and that we can impact their aspirations for their future, for college and for careers, and that we're probably pretty much in agreement that one of the ways to do that is by making sure that all of our students, every student, regardless of their background or their family's economic status or their family's educational levels, should have the opportunities to go and participate in amazing, life-changing programs wherever they may be, without regard, or at least without consideration to cost. But as Steve mentioned, looking for that great match. Next Step Fund began 5 years ago at Lee High School, just trying to solve, I was going to say a simple problem, but it's anything but. We wanted to figure out why more of our academically prepared students weren't going to college, and if they were going, they weren't staying. So we had two issues going on. Lots of kids who absolutely should have been enrolling and showing up at the college door, not just getting accepted. That's kind of something that's happening a lot right now. People talk about acceptance rates. We don't talk about as much about the show up at the door rates, which is a whole different story. We wanted kids to show up at the door and stay there. And we needed to understand why. And so we started exploring, trying to figure out what that was. And our theory is that there are a number of sets of, or a set of skills that kids need. One, they need academic skills, the primary work of the schools. Two, they need information about college going. How do we do the applications? How do we get scholarships? How do we get financial aid? That's absolutely necessary, and I would argue that schools are doing a much better job than they did 5, 10 years ago. But the third piece, the one that is often getting overlooked, are what we've identified as those social capital skills. Do kids have a sense of self-efficacy? Do they know how to handle themselves in unfamiliar situations? When the financial, or when the financial aid office misplaces their paperwork and their scholarship is temporarily lost, do they know how to go and advocate for themselves and show up, or do they just put everything in a box and go home? What happens when you have that first big blow up with your roommate, right? Do you know how to do any problem solving, or do you put your stuff in a box and go home? Or what if you're just scared to death after you've been accepted and you're just not even willing to get in the car and make the drive, right? There's so many things that trip kids up. Kids that are capable of doing great things, but they have other skills and other experiences that they're missing to be able to round out that puzzle and help them be successful. We decided to try and solve that issue, and so we came up with this idea that those skills can be learned, and they're often learned in circumstances and situations outside and beyond the regular classroom. They're not part of our regular daytime curriculum. And so we looked for where the places that have that kind of skills. And it's organizations like the Woods Project and hundreds, thousands of other programs locally, nationally, and even internationally that have a focus, have as their focus leadership development, career awareness, and career exploration, college readiness skills beyond the traditional academic skills. And so we wanted to get our kids there, right? And at Lee High School, it was 95% free or reduced lunch, and that's just because the other 5% didn't turn in the paperwork. And so these were students that would not have those opportunities if we didn't figure out some way to help them out. And so we went after that to see if this theory held water, and if we could make an impact on the lives of our young people there at the school. We quickly realized that there were a number of problems. One, there was lots of information coming into the school about great programs. There was no system in place to make sure that information got to kids. There might have been a bulletin board that nobody paid attention to, as is the case with many bulletin boards that are in hallways. And we realized that that didn't work. We also realized that that was happening because it was no one's job to make sure that the information got shared. And so one of the things that we did quickly was we hired Monica and said, Monica, you got to help figure this out. It's really important. We have no idea how to do it. Ready, go. And so Monica went about that task. First of all, figuring out what are those programs that seem to be highly impactful and have great potential for impacting kids. Two, what systems can we put in place to make sure kids get the information? The second obstacle we ran into, and that Monica worked to address, was now that I've got information to a student, they don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to fill out an application. They don't know how to have an interview over the phone. They don't know how to respond by email if they have email, or if they have an email account name that would be appropriate to share with people. And so the next piece was that there's a lot of one-on-one and small group teaching about the processes of putting yourself out there, filling out applications, writing essays, talking to people on the phone, all of the things that they're going to have to do when they get ready to apply to college and when they apply for scholarships. And here's an opportunity to practice those skills well in advance, as 9th graders, as 10th graders, as 11th graders. And then the third thing was, or obstacle that we worked to address was, and one of the reasons you're here tonight, was funds. And so if a family and a student got information about a program, and they went through all the process and they learned to do all the things right to get into the program, many programs have associated costs. And many of those associated costs are beyond many of our families' normal or typical budgets. And so the challenge was, how do we overcome that obstacle? And we decided that we would do a couple of things. One, that no matter what, every family must put something into the pot. They had to contribute. And there's two reasons for that. One very practical and one kind of a bigger picture, I think. One is we tend to value things that we've invested in. And we're more likely to show up if we have money on the line. That's a really practical piece. But the other piece that's not quite so practical, that's just more of our philosophy, is that we have to make sure that we don't steal from parents their right and their responsibility to take control and be proactive in their child's education. So if we do it all, then we've taken it from them. And that's, we decided that's not okay. That we have to empower parents to own and be responsible for their child, their young person's education and their future. And so for those two reasons, we make sure that regardless of the cost of the program, every family contributes something to the program. And then we, as the third part, or the last part, knew that some programs are beyond the scope of a family's, their financial situation would preclude their child from participation. We, as a Next Step Fund, then go out and we raise money and we help provide essentially scholarships, although we call it financial assistance. And in doing that, we also have students fill out financial assistance applications, just like they're going to have to do when they fill them out for college. So they have to write an essay and they have to do all the parts. Not because we are dying to read their essays or have lots of time to do that, but we think that learning is that important to practice it now so that when they get to the big game, they're ready to go. So just briefly, Steve talked about matching and some things that I would toss out for your consideration. In terms of which kinds of programs do we support and do we promote, we look at three key areas. One, we look for programs that are external to the regular work of the school. It's beyond the regular classroom. It's not a field trip. It's not an assembly at the school. Those are good. Let me be perfectly clear. Those are great. Those are often great. But we're looking for the experiences that take them beyond their normal circumstances and put them in situations where they have to stretch because it's a new place, because it's people they've never seen before, in places they've never been, doing things they've never done. Those are the big stretches. So that's our first criteria. Those are always college or career-based, so that the provider has an explicit intent to be able to address those concerns or those areas. The second thing, I'm about to go blank. Monica, you'll have to help me.
Rick Perry.
No, that would be my third thing. Oh, yeah. Thanks. The other thing is taking healthy risks, right? They have to apply. We've had some programs where they don't even have an application process, so we made one up, right? Just so the kids would have to do something to be able to put themselves out there. It is stunning how many kids have never had to put themselves out there in any way, in any form. And they don't know how to do that. And they don't know what it's like to have that kind of be on edge, not knowing whether you're accepted or perhaps not accepted, and how do you handle it when you're not accepted. And while most of our students get accepted, occasionally they don't, and those are learning experiences in and of themselves, and those are valuable learning experiences. And better to learn that when you're 15 or 16 than later on when the stakes are much higher and you don't know how to handle that kind of disappointment. So those are things that we look for when we look for what we call fantastic learning opportunities. It means there are some programs we don't necessarily support. Like Steve said, it doesn't mean they're not good. It just didn't meet our criteria. And we try to be really purposeful about what kinds of programs we get ready to send kids to and support their participation in. So that's a little bit about what we do and kind of the way we've thought about this idea that students need to participate in programs, and a little bit about the money and that notion that we want parents to own that. We want parents to contribute. If they can do it all, that's great. But if they can't, the schools we work with, we have a backup support. But either way, it's that notion that they need to own it. It's theirs, it's their investment, and it's their future. And empowering them to do that is we think, far more powerful. What happens when kids come back? A number of things. Our 9th, 10th, and 11th graders, when they come back, they're more likely to sign up for advanced placement and more rigorous courses because they put themselves out there and they've seen others from other schools and other states and other areas, and they realize that they got some work to do to be ready to go to college. They held themselves up against not a mirror, but against their peers. And boy, that's far more powerful than anything you or I tell them. One of our students came back and it's like, how'd it go? It's like, wow, I need to work on my vocabulary. And I thought, how many times did we tell you that? Right? But it didn't matter until you heard other kids use big words. And then it was real, right? And then he was all about focusing and improving his vocabulary. So there's a great sense of holding themselves up to their peer group and assessing their skills and their abilities in a very realistic way. They come back, they're more likely to raise their hand in class. They understand, they're not afraid to be the guy in the class or the gal who's raising her hand and look nerdy, because they've hung around with other kids who are confident and do that. And their aspirations change. So while every one of our students, if you asked them in the hall, what do you want to do after you graduate from high school, 100% would say, I want to go to college. They had no clue what that meant or what that looked like or how to get there until they went away and were often at colleges for a couple of weeks or with other students who had those same aspirations. And then when they came back, their own aspirations were much higher, and they had a much better understanding of what it would take to get there. So it was with it wasn't Michelle, maybe it was, who went to Princeton, who went there, and after he went to Princeton for 2 weeks, which sounded like I wished I'd gone, and while she was there, took a 2-week crash course, and took a course called War and Diplomacy, which sounded fascinating in and of itself. But when she came back, it was, what did you learn? And she's like, Mister, I was the only Hispanic student there. He's like, how was that? She's like, it was all right. She's like, I was kind of surprised. She surprised herself. It was all right. Mister, I was the only student there who wasn't from a private school. How'd you do? I was fine. Mister, they all eat funny food, like organic. It was like, how'd you do? I lost 10 pounds. It's like, okay. So what'd you learn? And her takeaway was, I can hang with them. Right? Now, we knew that. She didn't know that. So her college applications right now as a senior are to places like Princeton, Dartmouth, Duke, because now her aspirations had changed because she had a chance to go away, see herself in a more realistic setting, match her skill set up against her peers, and come back with the confidence that she could do great things. She would have gone to college with or without us, I have no doubt, but she might not be aiming for a Tier 1 university. She may have been aiming for something that would have really not been a good match for her skills. So she's going to do great stuff, and it's external programs and what we call fantastic learning opportunities that make that happen. So Steve, thanks for an opportunity to share, and thank you all for being here to help make sure more kids really get to have the benefit and the impact of fantastic learning opportunities, whether you use that name or not.
Thanks, Steve. Steve and I spent 2 weeks together in Donner Pass this summer. He came as a volunteer leader for the Woods Project. It was great to see Steve in the woods and see firsthand how a fantastic learning opportunity works. And I did give you a sense of some of the things that our school partners see in our programming and in all the other flow programming is KIPP and YES both independently came to the same answer about what kid to send to our program. They sent the kid that was bright enough, sharp enough, well-behaved enough, but sitting in the back of the class. And they'd send those kids to us, and all of a sudden that kid would come back and he'd be sitting in the front of the class, and he'd be engaged. And KIPP and YES independently kind of came up to that same profile of this is what we want to get out of this opportunity. So it gives you a sense of our schools click in pretty quickly with what they can get out of our programming, as well as out of the other flow programming, and we're just excited that schools do it. Where this seminar came from, you want to add something, Mark?
No, I want to add to it, finish.
Oh, okay. Where the seminar came from is A+ Challenge has been kind enough to give the Woods Project the use of their offices for our people for free. It's great. But one of the first days I was here, I was talking to Charlotte Parker, introducing myself, and talking about what we do at the Woods Project. And she said, well, you know, when I was at Hamilton, right?
No, Burbank.
Burbank, which is a low-income school, every year I took over 100 low-income kids to Paris or to Europe for 2 weeks, or for 10 days. I said, how in the world did you do that? said, well, I inspired the parents to give. And I said, how in the world did you do that? So the more I talked, I said, you know, this is amazing that she's been able to make this happen in her school. And so we built the seminar around Charlotte because she's been able to do some amazing things with her kids from her community. And with that, we'll turn it over to Charlotte. And is our camera running?
Go ahead. I'll give you a...
Great.
Oh,
go ahead.
okay.
Oh,
Real
Monica,
quick,
yeah,
but
yeah, well, you
you're
have a
probably
point.
going to say the same thing I'm about to say.
Absolutely.
I'm Monica. I work with Steve at the Next Step Fund. I just wanted to chime in as Steve was talking about, if I were sitting where you're sitting, I might be wondering, oh, that sounds like an interesting organization. They provide financial assistance to send kids to these fantastic learning opportunities. But even still, I want to know what it was like when that organization was sending a low-income student home with a piece of paper that said, congratulations, your son or daughter's been accepted to a program that costs $600. And we'll be able to provide assistance for $450 of that, so come up with $150. Because even still, that for many families is a very, very tall order. And so in our experience, what we learned was an incredibly, I think, successful way to approach that, because money can be an awkward and sticky topic, whoever you talk about it with. Much less in a position where, as an educator, you are wanting to inspire and motivate and then hold families accountable to putting in money to something. And I think what we found was critical every time was operating on the assumption, and Steve said this at the outset of the presentation, that every family wants the best for their son or daughter. And if we operate with that assumption, our talking points and getting them to make a financial commitment, albeit minimum, but getting them to make a financial commitment was much more about making sure that the parents had the most robust understanding, the most thorough understanding possible of that program from A to Z, how much it would benefit their son or daughter, how much they would get out of it and grow, and how much that experience aligns with all of the hard work they've been doing as parents. And as long as we got them as much of that information as possible, we then let them make that decision as a family to figure out, we've got to make this work for our son or daughter, and we're going to go in and we're going to make that happen. And I think it was giving them that information that was really very, very critical, but also being aggressive about it. Because I've got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old son, and they come home from Montessori school with papers, and I, being the nerd that I am, sit down and I read them all. And I respond to them. But you know what? I know how to read, and I have a college degree, and I'm used to navigating business professional norms, and so I can act on a letter that comes home to me. For many of the students in Houston that are growing in impoverished situations, their parents simply aren't operating with that baseline level of skill and knowledge and know-how. And so it's not as easy as sending home a piece of paper. The communication about the benefits, the program, has got to be more aggressive and innovative and really engage the parents. And we have found in our experience with our financial assistance protocol that as long as we provide that information to families, they typically step up to the plate and they make the commitment that we're then happy to help with. So I just wanted to add that in. If any of you were thinking, what does that look like when they tell a family they've got to be pitching in? And I'm sure Charlotte will add on her own wonderful tips in her experience.
Well, Charlotte is raising a heck of a lot more money from each
I'm
family.
sure she is.
As we'll hear.
Monica, thank you so much, and thank you for your passion and everything, right on everything you said. Good evening, everyone. And thank you, Steve, for inviting me to be a part of this conversation. And I applaud you for being here. I mean, you've worked all day, you're tired, and to come across town after 5 o'clock to come and hear how you can do more. It already says who you are. Give yourself a hand. I mean, you just tells you who you are. Who's in the room? Who's in the room? And so that's inspiring in and of itself, because when we came into this business, you know, we went and got our degrees, or whatever our degrees are in, our certification to come in and work with children. We thought it's going to be about reading, writing, and arithmetic, and we're going to go in there and teach our curriculum and do great things and inspire these kids. And we didn't realize that we were going to have to motivate, support, developing them a vision, inspire them to want to do more, create this sense of hope and belief that a better tomorrow is possible. And we find ourselves having to do it all. And so because we realized, I am a native Houstonian, grew up in Southwest Houston in 3rd Ward, went to Jack Yates High School. And what I learned with the Texas Southern University, and one of the things that I learned is that experiences changes. They transform your life. And the difference, I worked in a very upper middle class school when I first began to teach. I worked, matter of fact, right here on Richmond Avenue where you have the Bank of America now. There used to be a school there next to OHISD. It was a beautiful school called Will Rogers, a very upper middle class school. And my first principalship was at a school. I went, what is that? Rosamond, where is that? It's in North Houston, because you apply, you were in a pool, they assign you to a school. And after they said you are the new principal Roosevelt, I had to have my father take me there because I didn't know where it was. And so the thing that over 96% of the students were very reduced lunch. So I want to get you just to kind of set this whole thing up. My first year as a principal, 1992, and that was the year that they had the election for president, and Bill Clinton was running for president. He was elected, and my 2nd grade teacher came in and said, guess what? I said, what? I taught the kids in our history class that the White House was their house, and that whoever occupies the White House as president is simply occupied it for the people, but it belongs to them. And so the kids said, why can't we go there? The 7-year-old said, why can't we go there? I went, and what did you say? I said we could do it. You told them we could go to, you told them that we could go to the White House. How are we going to do it? She said, I don't know, but you're the principal. You can make a way. You said, inspire these kids. Teach them like we do it at Will Rogers. Make them believe they can do it. Help them get out of the inner city. Inspire them to do great things. They're going to college and all that. So now, put your money where your mouth is and make it happen. I went, oh, I thought I was coming to do this to teach the kid. Hire the teachers. I mean, they didn't tell me anything like this. And so she said, we can do it. How? How can we? I mean, do you know how much it's going to cost overnight? And do you know? She says, you're the principal. Make it happen. And so I want you to see what happened.
Need your help. Second graders from Roosevelt Elementary have been selling candy to finance their trip. They were at City Council today promoting their trip and hoping to make a few sales as well. Council members think the children have a very good idea.
That they want to study Congress and the Senate, that they have a dream, and that is to go to Washington. And in 3 weeks, they sold over 2,500 candy bars. Council members, if you want to buy any more, I'd appreciate it.
The Roosevelt second graders have an appointment with President Clinton. That appointment is for May 11th. Problem is, they still need about $10,000 to make the trip. Now, if you'd like to help, call Roosevelt Elementary at 695-2773.
Channel 13, KTRK-TV Houston. We care about Texas. Now, Eyewitness News with Dave Ward and Sheriff Fryer. Marvin Zimler's Action 13. Bob Allen has sports and the weather with Ed Brandon.
The second grade class is grading Bill Clinton's performance as president.
His promises, because he said that he was going to lower taxes, but he didn't. Instead of lowering them, he hired them, and he didn't keep his promise.
This class began its study back in November with a lesson on the electoral process, but they did not end with the Clinton victory. Instead, these students decided they wanted to meet the new president and deliver some advice.
I wanted to know if he could make more jobs, because people are getting laid off and they're not going to have enough money to buy food for their families.
In a class of 22 students, 8 put their hands up when asked if their parents had been laid off. Still, they were able to raise $12,000 necessary to fund their 6-day trip to Washington.
We need to send troops into the Bosnians because they're losing the war, and we need to help them.
From Bosnia to welfare reform to AIDS, all concerns, even to kids, they find out that this is not just something you see in a book. It's not something that you hear, but it becomes truly real for them. And what an opportunity for elementary kids to quiz the President of the United States. David Gaston, 13 Eyewitness News.
Tomorrow they're going to meet with the president later on this week. We'll show you how that meeting goes.
Suddenly came crashing down. Now, Houston and the world we live in.
We had some tough questions to ask you, and he didn't answer them. The drive-by shooting occurred shortly after 8 o'clock last night.
Now, with the last major hurricane to hit this state,
The heat factor in this fire alone increases 1,500 to 2,000 degrees.
This is Fox News 1230.
To take the nation's problems all the way to the top. Second graders from Houston's Roosevelt Elementary School met with President Clinton this morning. They've been following important issues like education, taxes, and AIDS, and wanted to hear what he's doing about them. Today's meeting was a highlight of their 5-day trip, but they'll also enjoy a good bit of sightseeing while they're at the Capitol. Somehow that the rest of the trip will measure up after you get to go to the White House and meet with the president.
Yeah, private meeting with the president, something they will never forget.
Field trips I've had in school.
Certainly not.
Now, Houston's Post Awards. Fox News at 9 with Fran Fawcett, Mike Barajas, meteorologist Robert Smith, and Mark Berman with sports.
Houston children get the chance of a lifetime. Second graders from Roosevelt Elementary traveled to the White House today and heard the president address their concerns on such issues as taxes, AIDS, and violence in our society.
They sent me this book. You got your book that you said, right? With all their letters telling me what I ought to be doing.
Something for the president to consider for our children's future. That's our report.
KTRK TV, Houston.
And so it started with an idea, and it ended with, it started with an idea and what the teacher taught the children. And because we had a vision, because we were inspired to say that if these kids can have the audacity to believe it, if they can have the audacity to ask to go, then we, the adults, have to make it happen. And so I can show you the rest of the footage, but the issue was that we started fundraising, because these parents didn't have that kind of money, to make this happen for the kids. Those kids sold 25,000 candy bars. Those 22 kids sold 25,000 candy bars for that trip. And the way we actually got into the White House, because we had been talking to our congressmen and senators and that sort of thing to try to get the kids, you can take the public tour, but we were trying to get in to meet the president and all that. And the way we were actually able to get in was, that day he was announcing the Small Business Administration Director. And he called the children the youngest entrepreneurs. And because they'd sold the 25,000 candy bars, that's how we got invited to the White House and introduced and first seen and showcased and all that. We were on the front of the Chronicle. We were the darlings of the whole city. It was a real big deal. But the issue was all about experience. That class, those 22 kids, every one of those children completed college. Everyone. That was in 1992. So they're, 27 years old now, 28 years old? But the issue is that you can imagine that experience when we went to D.C., we visited all the monuments, we went to Colonial Williamsburg, we were there like 6 or 7 days. But the issue is, as a leader, as a principal, and the teacher, and the parents in the community, we felt an obligation to expose those children and to create that kind of momentum. And after that, what I learned from that experience was that as a leader, as an educator, I had to do more. I had to expect more of myself. I had to be the kind of leader and be the kind of educator that said that my responsibility doesn't stop at the classroom, that we do need to engage the kids in these kind of experiences that can shape their life. And so, I would say that was probably the hallmark of my career. I retired from HIZ after 35 years and 20 years as an administrator in 2009. And I was a principal at the elementary level, then middle school, and then high school. In all of those years, I continued my campaign to say that it was important to expose kids to lots of opportunities and experiences that I felt would shape and mold their lives. And so my conversation with you tonight is just to give you a little bit of my experience and how I made it happen, how the team of people worked with me. We were able to accomplish things that people thought, why would they even do that? And again, the thing that I said to them was, why not? Why not? And if it's good enough for kids in other parts of the city, why can't these kids be exposed? When I left Roosevelt and went on to Burbank at the middle school level, And again, it wasn't just the Vanguard, because both Burbank and Roosevelt had Vanguard programs. But these opportunities were open to any kid in the school. And it wasn't, you know, a certain, it was very important to me that we not just kind of pick even just the top kids, because if the kids in Vanguard need to be exposed to, certainly the kids who in the regular program or other program need to be exposed to, because these are just best practices and these are life-affirming opportunities for children. And so part of what I want to talk to you about, this is generating resources to enhance academic excellence. And the first thing I would say to you is that, well, we're talking about co-curricular and extracurricular. What does that have to do with academic achievement? It has everything to do with it. Because if you can't really say it's going to help kids be more academically successful, then it's not worth doing. It's all about that. So the soft skills and these things that Steve talked about, those social skills, it's all about helping kids stay in school, helping kids be more self-confident, having kids feel better about themselves so that when they go to Princeton, they feel I belong. And so can you imagine those second graders? I remember when we were on the subway in D.C., and people coming up and saying to me, where are you from with all these kids? And I said, well, I'm from Houston, Texas, and they're so well behaved, they're so mannerable, they're so this. And we were in Europe with groups of kids. They marveled at how well disciplined the kids were. And if you had seen how our kids interacted with children and students from other countries, it was amazing. So the social skills, the communication skills, the ability to be able to navigate, there's so many things that the kids learn and how those things translate even into the academics, kids being more self-confident as they went along. The first thing that I want to consider and to kind of say to you is that the leaders are driven by a vision of excellence. And I think whether it be the teacher leader, the principal leader, the assistant principal, it starts with the vision. And so part of what I would say is that when I was at Roosevelt, again, 96% of the students were on free reduced lunch, a school-wide Title I program, and we went on, we did the trip to D.C., and that was, we would go to D.C. probably once or twice a year. We did spring break, and then we also did trips in the early fall. Took the kids to Philadelphia, and San Antonio, Austin, Boston, Florida, went to Space Camp in Montreal. That was at the elementary level. Then at Burbank, which again was a high poverty school over in the same part of Houston, in North Houston, every year we went to Europe. And that was my first year there, I think it was 2002. We went to Paris and London, then Barcelona and Madrid, then Switzerland, Rome, and Italy, then Greece, and then Paris, Venice, and Germany. And then they went to China, and that was the year that they moved me to Kashmir. But again, it all started with, and all of these trips, the kids had to raise money, but there was not anyone paying for this other than the kids. And for the most part, we had between 60 to 100 kids. The Barcelona-Madrid was the biggest trip. Probably had about 115 people went on the Barcelona-Madrid trip. And they were quite successful. And these are just some of the Burbank students traveled the world. And so one of the things that, again, just like the DC trip, just starting with the idea of showing the kids that you can do it. And a lot of what Monica said about the contact and what I'm talking about, you have to sell the message. And it's not, again, the how, it's the why. Those compelling stories to motivate and say, we're going to Europe. Can you imagine taking your 11, 12-year-old to Paris to see the Eiffel Tower? And some of the parents don't even know what that is. My parents, they'd be like, okay, Eiffel Tower, where is that? Is that important? But saying to those parents that this experience is going to change your child. It's going to really motivate your child. It's going to inspire your child. It's going to give your child an edge that other kids don't have. And I believe deeply what Monica said, that parents will make any sacrifice necessary to ensure their kids are successful. And if you can make a compelling story to tell them why and how this is going to help their kids, they will make the necessary sacrifices. And so this was, I think, the last year we went to Germany and Venice. This is the last year I was there at Burbank. And some of we were the Burbank Eagles. And the kids didn't cost Steve $7,000. The trips were more like about $1,400 for the Europe trips, and so we had one of the student tour groups, EFI or whatever, Explorica, and we coordinated the trip. But the idea was, when we went into the conversation with the parents, it was about what exposing our kids to Europe would mean, how that was going to help the kids, how it was going to give the kids again an edge, and what we thought the impact of that kind of experience would have. And then, as a principal, I didn't just leave it to my magnet coordinator or my other people to do it. I actually attended the first session to tell parents that, first of all, their kids would be safe. It was going to be a great opportunity for their kids. I really thought that they should get behind it. And then one of the things I think also was really important, when you tell a parent you have to come with $1,400, whoa, what? But when we talk to the parents about the fact that, like you said, Steve said, we want an initial down payment, we're going to break it up into payments, here's how we're going to schedule over time, we're starting in August and we're going to have your final payment in by February, here's how we're going to do it, here's how we're going to help you do it. And so it becomes more palatable with that understanding and doing it that way. And history becomes alive when kids are able to see places they read about, they've heard about for many years, and again, to me, anything that we did connect academically. When the kids went on these trips, they didn't just go, but we had study packets. There were questions. The kids had journals to keep. Their academic skills aligned to this, so that it became something that was very much aligned to the instructional program. The impact, and again, I realize right now the impact of economic realities on education. We all realize that funding from the state and local districts has been cut. That many of our corporate partners have reduced or limited their giving. Times have really changed in that regard, and some of the people we used to depend on for support are just not giving at the same level anymore. Campus leaders are required to provide services to more students with complex needs, so those discretionary funds are not really available to do some of the co-curricular and extracurricular activities. Families have reduced resources as they respond to unemployment, fewer hours, and layoffs. Campus priorities have shifted in response to accountability structures. And some of this really bothers me in the fact that a lot of our ancillary and co-curricular and those kind of what we call soft program opportunities are dwindling in our schools just because we believe, well, we got to get kids ready for tax and start and all that, which is unfortunate because we know that those programs that keep kids in school and motivate kids are essential, so it's unfortunate. So co-curricular extracurricular activities are perceived as expendable, and that, to me, is not the case at all. If you're going to really have a truly exemplary, strong program, you need to develop the whole child, and we need to make sure that kids are getting those experiences that will help mold and shape them and shape their futures. Creating momentum to fundraise successfully. Motivate your base. So as Monica said, you motivate, motivate, motivate. You have to personalize. You have to energize. You have to excite people. You have to be passionate yourself about it. If students are excited, eager, and enthusiastic about the project, parents will respond in kind. But you've got to go to the parents and those initial conversations and meetings, it has to go beyond the flyer, to sending a flyer home and say, are you interested? So we send out interest letters, but having those meetings where we actually talk to the parents in English and in Spanish and really say to them, this is how great it's going to be. The leader has to be personally involved. And I'm not saying that the principal or the assistant principal has to go out and do all the fundraising, but certainly they need to be in the room with the conversation around the activity, experience. They have to support it in terms of announcements, prioritizing, connect the goals of the fundraising to things parents value. The students' grades, attendance, scholarship, college, and graduation. Those are things they understand. So we make the connection between the activity, the program, and the experience to those things that they value. Think big. Dare to think outside the box. Do you think that 22 innocent children would be invited to the White House by the president and based on their fundraising savvy? And that was how we got in. More is possible than you think. It really, and I found it to be really true. And again, it starts with an idea, and then there's the legwork and being really strategic in putting it together. You have to have the idea, but An idea without the action, the work, is not going to take off. The organization and structure are essential. And part of what I am a very detail-oriented person. So if someone came to me and said, we want to go to Paris and London, and we have the tour company, have all that done, my thing is let's develop an action plan. So that everything from the initial meeting and timelines for that to having a schedule of how the money's going to be paid, what are the fundraising forms all approved, a calendar of fundraising so we know, a process. So all those details are very important in the project being successful. Conduct an information session with students and parents to sell the project, provide written information in multiple languages, coordinate access to vendors to make the process easy and convenient. Now you don't want to say, well parents, here's a list of vendors, so you can go to World's Finest Chocolate and call them and get it done. You have to make it convenient, because our parents don't know how to navigate all that and go and do that. So being able to invite the vendors there, set up the vendor opportunity for the parents, have the candy distributed through someone at the school, all those things have to happen to really make it doable and make parents buy into the program. Have participants become invested in the project with down payments and volunteering to coordinate activities. And I thought Steve said that earlier, they have to have some skin in the game. Just giving, and them not having any money, because one of the first things that we have that initial information session and we sell the project and we tell parents about it and give the flyer telling them how the money's going to be paid, we say that if you really are interested, it's a $50 non-refundable down payment, just to say, okay, and when they pay that $50, then I have them hooked, and I continue to, okay, here's the next amount of money due, and we kind of show them how we're going to raise money at the same time. They've got to be vested in the project. Seek parental input and act on their suggestions. And part of what I think we miss the most sometimes is that we are always telling people what we want to do, but what we actually did was to ask parents, how do you think we need to raise money? So some of the parents wanted to sell tacos, some of them said a car wash or whatever. And so we acted on some of their recommendations. So it's not just us telling them what to do, but we work together to kind of develop a fundraising calendar and process and protocol. Remain flexible. Part of what I think is important is that, we sold the candy, and because we had, one of the parents worked over, she worked at one of the union halls. The Teamsters Union Hall or something over off North Freeway. And so there was a lot of guys in there, and then we had a lot of other parents who had jobs where selling the candy was going to be a good thing. It's another trips I went on, candy sales didn't really work well. And so we sold popcorn, we did car washes. So you've got to be flexible. If one thing you do it for a while, and sometimes the return on some fundraising experiences will be really strong initially, and then it kind of wanes. And so you've got to be flexible and say, we do this a little while, and kind of vary it so that you don't kind of wear it out and you do multiple things. Create awareness and gain support school-wide. One of the things I think is important with fundraising is that if a teacher or organization does a fundraiser, it's important that the campus leader get behind, especially if it's a really strong project that you really believe in. I didn't sell the project as, well, it's just Ms. Thomas's class going, or this is just the cheerleaders field trip. It was more the fact that Burbank is going to Europe. And so I need everyone to support Burbank because we're going to Europe. And because you are part of the Burbank family, any way that you can support this project will help us. Because when we go to DC or to Europe or wherever we go, and we say that the Burbank is going, then you are part of that. We're your ambassadors. And so the idea of whether it be getting on the intercom saying, don't forget to support the classes going to Europe, me making announcements, me supporting, and me galvanizing the whole school community around the idea that this is something I want them to support was important. One of the things is communication to me is essential. If you're going to really be a successful fundraiser and really get the resources you need to make your project rock, you're going to have to frequently update the students and the parents. with lots of flyers, lots of written information, calendars and call-outs. Establish timelines and benchmarks for the project. You don't want to wait up until a month before the trip to find out that 50% of your kids haven't met your financial goals and that you're going to have to scratch the trip. So you got to really have benchmark and timeline and lots of information and lots of pushing. One of the things that happens also, let's say you have these big trips like whether it be a trip or project or program, the Woods Project, taking kids on an international trip, going to a college development program. The issue is, kids, if you start a project in August or September, and you tell the kids it's going to be for next summer or for spring break, in between that is football season, there are other activities, so kids lose interest. And so kids can't kind of think, ahead like that. Well, you're saying summer or in spring break, and so they lose interest, and then they'll tell parents, well, I don't want to do that. No, that's okay, I don't want to go. So you've got to really keep the momentum up, meet with the kids frequently, pull them together, and really make it like a team effort to really keep them engaged in the project so they don't lose interest and they continue to stay on track with the long-term goals. A lot of follow-up with individual parents is needed. We provided a variety of ways for families to support the project. So it wasn't just sales and direct fundraising, also donations. Many of the parents asked me to write a letter for donation. They could go to their church, their bosses, their organizations, their civic organizations or whatever, and gather donations to the school or to the project to help with the project. And then also, one of the things I thought was important, let's say we were getting ready to have a big dance, and I asked parents to donate buns or winners or whatever for hot dogs to sell at the dance. And some of the parents said, well, I just can't do that, but I could come and help out. So we gave parents credit not just for donations and sales, but also for their participation and their work with the project. That also helped them to get some portion of the proceeds from various fundraising opportunities. Coordinate the fundraising to reduce conflicts and competitions. In a big comprehensive high school, middle school, you have the cheerleaders, the band, the football team. Everybody wants to do fundraising. So part of what we tried to do was to minimize conflict so that there was one central screen person who screened all the requests for fundraisers, and so we didn't have everybody selling Kent at the same time. So we kind of spread out, and I let them know up front that these international trips was a big umbrella goal for the school, and so I gave them priority over some of the other things that were going on campus. Identify and support. You need to identify and gather support from your key communicators, and those are people kind of in your school community. Sometimes there are people in your school community, parents and community people who, if they sanction or support a project, they can galvanize everybody on your side. And so being able to get those people, kind of get to them first and say, guess what? We have an opportunity to take our kids to Europe. This would be such a wonderful coup for the kids individually and for the school. How can you help us support that? And you get them on your side, they're going to get all the support you need from everybody else in the community and really sell your program and really help you be successful. Celebrate reaching your fundraising goals. Keep the conversation focused on the why, not the how. Because a lot of what we talked about and why we kept the excitement and we were successful year after year was that we kept talking about why this was so wonderful for our kids, why it was so great that our kids be exposed to it, and so the how in terms of the fundraising, all the different things, otherwise people go, they're always asking for money over that school. Every time I look up, they're asking for some more money, and it wasn't that so much. We said, our kids are doing this. Look at all the experiences they have at Burbank that other schools don't do. We are doing these because Hamilton and these other schools don't do this. Your kids are not, we always hear about Lanier and Lamar and this. Your kids at Burbank are going to Europe. And so, okay, I can support that. And parents will sacrifice. Again, parents will sacrifice to provide experiences for their children that they believe are essential. Make the event or project a very public celebration. Our school will be going to Europe. So that was a big thing. We celebrated. You saw all the media coverage on that. And again, it was about, our kids seeing themselves in a more positive light, knowing that because Burbank was on the north side of Houston, they are not valued and important and can be involved in anything else that, that they want to do. Chronicle the excitement and benefits of the experience in the school newspaper, the website, well, I don't know if I make that, but anyway, and throughout the school, just, you know, just always keep it up, you know, the cheering squad going about how wonderful it is that the kids are going to have these opportunities and have these experiences. Okay. Any questions? You ready to go out and fundraise? Question back here.
At what point did you start contacting the local news media?
Almost once it got off the ground and we had the number of people who had kind of signed up and made the commitment, and we really felt that the contracts were in place with the various touring companies and all that kind of was solidified, so it was actually happening. Then I started kind of getting the press and getting that, because then I was able to approach people like Mattress Mac, and because once we got out the word that we were doing this, then I was able to myself go to some of the business contacts like local benefactors and say, you know, we're trying to take these inner city kids to this experience, and we certainly would love for you to be a part of this wonderful opportunity for the kids. Yes, sir.
You mentioned something about motivating your base. Are you referring to the parents?
Yes.
So you prefer to talk with the parents first,
yes,
and the kids, or
kind of together. That first information session was with parents and with the kids, because, and again, some of the conversations started with the kids, because with the kids kind of start the buzz. You're not going to even get the parents to come that night if you don't get the kids to say, Mommy, I want you there. So it starts with the kids. So it starts with telling the kids, and some of the kids, like this grassroots thing with going to D.C., those kids, the ones who told the teacher told me, and then, you know, we went to the parents. So the kids first, and then the parents. Andrea?
I was just going to say hi. I'm Andrea Mays with the Woods Project, and I think one big takeaway here, especially for those that are either inside a classroom or crazy running around as administrators, is that you yourself have to be excited and motivated and provide that vision for your students, and then get them excited. And in return of that, they get their parents excited and invested. But if you're in charge of something or a project and you're not excited, or you don't believe, like that teacher that took them to Washington, D.C., one of the questions on the news clips was, did you really think that this could be possible? And she said, absolutely, from the very beginning. And so you yourself have to have that vision, but also believe that that vision is possible.
So Charlotte, how much money do you think each family actually raised themselves working hard?
They had to raise it all. I mean, it was $1,400, and so let's say they had to all give a $50 deposit, and then over the course of, and we started, see, we didn't start just in August. I actually started like the May before. They said we're going to, the trip for all at spring break. The district would let me have maybe 2 days before school was out for spring break. So like you said, it was 10 days, so we didn't make it worth our while. And so we would actually start the May before. So in May, I would say, okay, we're getting ready to go next spring to Europe. And I need, who's interested? Let's talk about it. We didn't have call-outs then, but we send flyers home and we start the conversation. So we started the planning and kind of outlining what we're going to do next fall and starting then. So parents who are interested, okay, let's get your funds, because when you come back, if you're really interested, we're going to need that $50 or $100 when we come back to school in August. And then, you know, get ready with what you think about what you want to do so we can really get it going and gear it up. And then we kind of, like I said, stretch it out. So most of the money had to be in for those tour companies. If you're going in March, they weren't all paid by January or something. And so, and we even said to parents, okay, that would be a great, you know, rather than giving them all this Christmas stuff, that's going to be their Christmas gift, you know. And the kids, they were excited, because once the kids who went the first time came back and said, we had a great time, and we taught the kids on the train from France, and it was like, you know, the momentum was there. You know, for all the years I was there, the whole 5 years I was posted, we went every year.
So that initial $50 good faith money was really critical. Coming in early.
Steve's right about that. If you don't have them, you know, because it can't, and then again, I didn't just, they raised most of, let's say I maybe raised, you know, God donations, maybe 3,000 or 4,000 that I spread across the trip. But for the most part, the kids paid for their trips all themselves.
How did you deal with sometimes there's a fundraiser and 20 kids show up?
and they all help wash cars. So $2,000 were made. Would you then divvy up that $2,000 amongst just the 20 kids that showed up? That wouldn't go into a big pot, that would go to everybody.
Those kids who showed up. Because we made those distinctions. Everyone had an account, and so there was a one of the clerks in the magnet office. She actually kept the ledger, and so we had everyone knew what their account balances were, and had like a spreadsheet. We kind of just said, okay, this is where you are. So both their individual payments, their fundraising, helping out the car wash, or their support. But if a parent and a spaghetti dinner, and all the parents brought different stuff, that would be all divvied up among the. But if we had a car wash or a particular thing like that, no.
Only the students that actively participated.
Benefited from that fundraising. Any other questions?
And one thing I'd add is I think there are two pots of money that families have available. There's the rent money pot, and then there's the emotional pot. And then that emotional pot is where this money is coming from, and that's a very flexible pot that parents will go run through walls if they think emotionally this is the right thing for their kid. And that's what Charlotte's figured out how to tap into. It's all about appealing to that right pot of money. You're not going to get it out of the same pot of money that comes from where they pay for the book they lost. That's a whole different game. So.
And I want you to know, some of these parents, had sent 2 kids. Because even for me, I'm working, two kids, $1,400 a piece. And I said, Bonita, how you, she says, she was a domestic, but she said she took on extra work. She played, she said, I'm saving my money, I want my baby to go. And she wanted both her kids to go. And she said, some of the parents went on the trip to Madrid and Barcelona, a lot of the parents wanted to go. And so they paid for they raised money not only for their kids, but for themselves. And so I can tell you with 110% assuredness that it can happen, it does happen. I lived it. And your kids are no different than the ones that I had at Burbank and at Roosevelt and Cashmere High School. And it all comes down to the key ingredients. First of all, your level of motivation, enthusiasm, and passion, your strategic planning, and being precise in terms of the process and protocol, having all that structure, and then your consistency and follow through. That's it. That's it. If you do that, you can get anything you need from these parents and these kids around projects and opportunities for their kids. And the real great thing about it is that it is magical and wonderful. I never forget it. There was a little girl, her name was Paloma. And I will never forget this conversation for as long as I live. And it was a different Washington trip. So Paloma was in the 3rd grade. And we were on the back of the bus, and she was looking out the back of the bus. And so I was sitting back near her, and I said, Paloma, what are you looking at? And she said, oh, Dr. Barber. She's so dramatic. Oh, Dr. Barber. I'm looking at, and we were leaving Colonial Williamsburg. We'd gone to Williamsburg, and of course, Colonial Williamsburg is old time, like in the 70s, the whole village is like the 1700s. And so they have the people with the white powdered wig and the blacksmith and all that. And so she was sitting there looking. I said, well, what are you looking at? What are you thinking about? She says, I'm just looking at everything and taking it in. Because my grandmother and my mother and father really worked hard to pay for this trip for me. And so I'm seeing it for them. I am seeing, and I said, okay, Paloma, that's enough. Time out. Okay, I'm not going to start crying in front of this little girl. She says, I am seeing it for them. They made the sacrifice, and she is 8 years old. She said, I'm going to be a doctor one day. And my parents said they want me to see and do things they never did. And I'm seeing this for them. I thought, baby, time for the next fundraiser. Okay, because I'm in. She had me hooked. She had me hooked. Whatever I have to do, all the emails and paperwork and stuff I have to do. Paloma, you did it for me. You validated why I do this. You validated why I take on more work. HISD is giving me 100 emails a day and all this stuff I have to do. And why am I taking on this additional thing? Because Paloma said she is seeing for them and she is inspired. And this trip for her was life-changing. And so that's why you do it. And that's why you're going to do great things with kids. That's why you do it. Thank you.
you all for being here tonight. This is great. We're really pleased to have you all join us. We hope everybody came away inspired with how to make this happen. When I heard Charlotte's story, I was like, holy cow, this is amazing. And I see every summer with the kids we have at the Woods Project, how their lives change. It just knocks your socks off. I mean, there's so much you can do in a classroom, but there's so much more you can do in these extra and co-curricular things. So thank you for being here. I think Andrea and I and Steve and Monica and Charlotte will be around for a few minutes. We'd love to have any questions you have. Andrea, you have anything you want to add? Or?
No, I think that, we provided a big vision for you all with talking about going overseas or going to the mountains or going to college activities. But I want you to be able to know that you can take away these things and implement them within your classroom for field trips, for any sort of learning opportunity. Think big, go aspire to be big, but if the things right now in front of you are more realistic to get your kids outside of Houston to go to a farm for a field trip, I mean, this is possible. These things you can take away and use on that level too. So I think the biggest thing is, these kids want to have experiences, and as Charlotte said, these experiences that you give your kids shape their whole future. And as educators or in the education realm that we all are, as we all want to see that our kids walk away as successful students in the academic world, but also as citizens. So
the last thing is I want to give you guys a big round of applause for being here. So and hopefully we'll see you on some great trips. Damn.
No,
Wow.
You're well.
Sorry. Here, I got some actually, we're already in the midst of not yet. I'm supposed to when I go. I have to say hi to this lady.
In our school we have
Oh, I love you guys. He's great. He's got it. He's got it.